Hi, in this video we are going to work on Lab 2. In this lab we are going to keep practicing using HTML and CSS. We will be implementing the segmenting and the signaling principles of multimedia learning. So let's take a look to the finished lab. We are going to use the same job 8 that we used in Lab 1. And we are going to add expandable and collapsible sections. So you can click on each of the steps and then we are going to see the content for that specific step. Delivering the information in this way is particularly convenient when using mobile devices because learners will not have to scroll down in a very long page. Instead, they can just expand the step or the section that they want to see. And by clicking on the step title once more, they will be able to collapse that section. We will also cover how to implement the signaling principle to highlight specific information. Like in this case, we are changing the background color to this last paragraph. And we are also adding an icon to gain learners' attention. I will be following the tutorial that is provided in Canvas. So let us start with our first section. We need to prepare the folder and the file structure. So let us open Finder or File Explorer. And we're going to create a new folder within the IST541 folder. Okay, so I will collapse this Lab 1 folder. I will double click the IST541 folder and then I will just right click over here and then click on new folder to create a new folder. I will name this folder Lab 2. Now inside this Lab 2 folder we are going to create a folder for CSS similar to the CSS folder that we have in Lab 1. We will not need to create the IMG folder because we intend to use the same images that we have already used in Lab 1. However, if you plan to use different images, then you will need to create another folder called IMG inside Lab 2. Alright, so let us click on Lab 2, just double click on it, and inside it, create a new folder, and we are going to call it CSS. Alright, again, in my case, I will not create the IMG folder because I will be using the same images that I have in Lab 1. Alright, so we have already created the folder structure. We created the Lab 2 folder and also the CSS folder. Now we will need to copy the index.html file, the job 8, that we created in Lab 1. So we will need to duplicate this file. So you can just right click and then select copy, or you can press also Command C to copy it. Go to the Lab 2 folder and then paste the item. Alright, so you should have the index.html inside Lab 2 as well. And we also need to duplicate the job8.css file that we created in Lab 1. So again, I will need to copy it. I will just right click and then click on copy. You can also press Command C if you want. Go to the CSS folder within Lab 2 and then paste the item. So you can see that you have job8.css inside the CSS folder. Alright, so now that we have duplicated these two files, we are able to start working in them. So let us open in Dreamweaver this index.html. So I will go to Dreamweaver and then click on File and then Open. And then go to the folder that you have created within the IST541 is lab 2, and then is the index. Make sure that you are opening the index.html that is located within lab 2, not the one that you created for lab 1. All right, and let us click on open. Okay, now that we have opened it, we can see in the design view over here that it's already applying the styles. And it is applying the styles because we duplicated the job.a.css file and we put it within the CSS folder. However, if we scroll down, we will notice that the images are missing. We don't have the images for any of the steps. We don't have the images because we didn't duplicate the img folder. So we will need to change the path to the images to use the same images that we used in the previous lab, in lab 1. So there are two main ways to do that, to locate the images. So just scroll down and step 1. And then within the step image, you will notice that you have the img HTML tag. And we will need to update the value for the source. Okay, so this value over here assumes that you have an img folder within lab 2, which is not the case. So let me show you a couple of ways to fix this path over here. When using Dreamweaver, it's a little bit easier to find the path to the image. We just need to remove the value of source, so remove the double quotes and also the value of the source attribute. And then you might need to also remove the equal symbol and then type the equals symbol once more. And then Dreamweaver displays automatically this browse feature. So by clicking on it, we are going to be able to browse in a local computer to locate the file that we want to display. So I will click on this browse and then just go to the image that you want to display. So in this case, the image is within my lab 1 folder within the img, and then the name is step 1 png. All right. And once I click on it, you should be able to see the image over here. And we can also see that the value for the source attribute has been updated. So it added these 2 dots and the lab 1, right? Before we only had img and the name of the file. So it added this to the path. All right. Now, if you don't have a Dreamweaver, so you can just manually type the path, right? So for instance, over here I am displaying the image for the second step. So you will just need to type 2 dots like this, / and then lab 1 / and then click on the design view and you should be able to see the image. All right, now these 2 dots over here means that the content is one folder up, one folder above. So let me open the Finder, might be easier to explain it here. So right now our index.html is in lab 2. So in order to access this img folder that is located in the lab 1 folder, we will need to go one folder above. We will need to go to the IST541 folder, right? So it has to go one folder up. So in order to go to one folder up to the parent folder, we need to use the 2 dots, the 2 dot notation. This one over here. These 2 dots over here means one folder above. Once we are in the IST541 folder or the parent folder, then we can go to the lab 1 folder and then to the img folder. All right. So you will need to update all of the values for the source attribute to be able to display the images that are located within the lab 1 folder. So you will just need to add these two dots, forward slash, and then lab 1, another forward slash, to the source attribute for every image in your file. Okay, so now we are ready to create the collapsible sections. All right, before doing that, just make sure that you read in Canvas the resources about how to create the collapsible sections. So we'll go to Canvas and we are going to use the details element to be able to collapse the content. So I will click on it just to do a quick review of how to create collapsible sections. All right, so we are expecting to create something like this. So for that, we can go to the W3 schools. Basically, we need to add this details HTML tag, the opening tag on the top, and then we need to add the closing details tag. And we will need to also add the summary element to display what you need to click to collapse or expand this section. So again, we just need to add the details and the summary elements. Okay, so let us close these browser tabs. Let us go back to Dreamweaver. So what we need to do is to surround each of the steps with the details HTML element. The opening details tab at the top and the closing details tag at the bottom. So just make sure that you locate the first step, the HTML tag for the first step. And then we will need to remove the div with the ID of step 1. So this line over here needs to be removed. So we need to remove the opening div and the closing div for this container with the ID of step 1. All right. So we will need to replace that with the details tag, right? So let me do that. I will first select it, then delete it, and then I will replace it with details, like this. Dreamweaver is going to close the details element right away. So we will need to cut this closing details tag. Just cut it from here. And we will need to make sure that we are surrounding the whole content for the first step. So it has to include the step title and also the step content. The step content includes the description and also an image. So just scroll down. We should close the step content over here. And this div over here is closing step 1. So you can see that it's in red because we don't have an opening div. So now we will need to remove this closing div as well. And then paste there the closing details tag. All right. So in this way, the details tag is surrounding all of the content for the first step. Let us save the file. Go to File and then Save. Now, if we click on the design view, we don't see the collapsible section, right? The design view is not interactive. So let us open it in the browser directly. So go to your Finder and then double click on the index.html. So it opens in a new browser tab. And then you should be able to see this collapsible or expandable section, right? So when you click on details, you can expand and collapse the content for the first step. So if you don't have the summary element, by default, then it's going to just display details. So let's make the title the clickable section. So learners will need to click on the title to expand and collapse the information for that step. All right, so let me go back to Dreamweaver. And now let us locate the title for step 1. let me scroll up. And this is the title for the step 1, step title over here. So what I will do, I will replace this div HTML tag. Instead of a div, I will use the summary element, summary like this, right? So we have the opening summary, and we are going to close a summary over here. So we will need to remove this closing div and just add the closing summary. We shouldn't remove this class over here because we want to keep the same styles that we have applied before. All right, so let us save it. If I click on the design view again, unfortunately Dreamweaver is not able to display the content of the details element, so we just need to see it in the web browser. So I will go to the web browser and we will need to reload this page. All right, so you can see now that we have step 1, and the title of step 1 is clickable. So you can click on the title and it expands and collapses the information. All right, so let me do the same for step 2. So I will go to Dreamweaver, and then I will just need to locate the beginning of step 2. Is over here, right? So I will need to remove this div. So I will remove it and just replace it with a details element. All right, so I will need to remove this closing details from here and then put it all the way at the bottom of step 2. So it should be over here, right? So I will remove this closing div and replace it with the closing details tag. All right. After that, I will remove the div for the step title. So I will locate the step title over here. So we shouldn't have this div. Instead of this div, we are going to use the summary element, and we will need to close it over here. Summary. All right. Now I will save it, and then we can reload the page. Both of the steps are now expandable and collapsible. All right. You can by default show one of them open if you want. So for that, all we need to do in the details tag, let us do it for the first step, for step 1. So we can display it open initially. We can just add the open attribute like this. All right, so let me save it and then reload this page, and you will notice that step 1 is initially displayed expanded, and step 2 is collapsed. I just noticed that here in the label of the tab still reads lab 1. We need to update it. This is lab 2. So I will go to Dreamweaver and then go to the title element. It's over here. So we just need to fix this. This is lab 2, not lab 1. Okay, and then we can save it, reload it, and you will notice that now the label of the tab is updated. So please continue making collapsible all of the remaining steps. Hopefully it's not that difficult. You just need to be careful when you are adding the details tag. So just remember that you will need to replace the current divs with each of the steps, and make sure that you are also closing it in the right place. So it should be closed right below the closing div for the step content. All right, and once you are done, we are going to move on applying CSS to implement the signaling principle.